So we were having a mock trial. The case was, it wasn't necessarily a true case, but it's kind of an aggregate built on a number of true cases where there's a student whose backpack was searched while at school, and a private investigator found marijuana in the backpack. And so what we were in is we heard closing arguments, and then we ended up hearing the jury's deliberation.
We got the closing statements coming up here. The prosecution's going to go first in just a second. So what can you expect if you're a jury member? Closing statement is going to be similar to the opening statement, where it's going to be, talking about the case again and kind of, suggesting why they think that, he should be guilty or not guilty. And then at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the jury.
The evidence shown should prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. McGraw is guilty of crimes punished against him. Mr. McGraw never cleaned the bag, and so the smell of marijuana would continue to sit around until April 22nd. He would buy the backpack in the late month of April, when the school year is ending. So there would be no reason to buy a backpack at this point of the year. If the bag was bought for $5, then it is $54 worth of marijuana in the bag, making the marijuana more valuable than the backpack, and giving clear reason to it being Al's marijuana.
I don't understand why a 17-year-old boy who has never been in trouble before with the law and or at school would be found with weed in a hidden backpack pocket. To be clear, the neighbors had offered Al's family weed before, and then they had declined and thought that the neighbors were kind of weird for asking that. The backpack had been purchased at a yard sale from the hippie neighbors. Why would Al, who has never been suspicious of such a thing, be found with marijuana in his backpack?
Members of the jury, you have heard all the testimony concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine the facts. You and you alone are the judges of the facts. You will then have to apply the facts to the law as I give it to you.
The prosecution must set out such a convincing case against the defendant that the jury believes beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty.
It is a petty misdemeanor to possess or give away a small amount of marijuana. The law defends a small amount of marijuana is 42.5 grams or less.
Both sides, we had a prosecution and a defense. Both sides were pretty well prepared. And then, it really comes down to if the kids believe that the defendant is at fault or not.
So 15 of you need to decide whether you think he's guilty or not, right? So what are the things that we know? At the end of the day, is he technically in possession of marijuana at school? Yes, right? So it comes down to, do you think the fault is his, or do you think it was the neighbors? Okay, so what do we can even start with a preliminary vote, and then we can talk more about it, but just like a show of hands as far as who thinks guilty or not guilty. Let's start with guilty. Raise your hand if you think Al is guilty and deserves a punishment, okay? So that is going to be as a mistrial, which means that in real life what would happen, it would be if the one thing that, honestly, something like this, a misdemeanor charge, it's very likely that it would probably be maybe after a mistrial, either let go eventually, or it might lead to a different plea deal or something where, instead of spending the time and money to go through another trial and everything, they would, just kind of push it on and maybe a minor punishment. Or if they did want to do another trial, what would happen is there would be a fully new jury.
And most kids I asked as well if they would like to do it again, and many of them, raised their hand and said yes. And, so we'll probably do it again with a different case.